Well, the next step has been taken in the Frank White saga. Good morning. Happy Thursday. Glad you're here on KCMO Talk Radio, 95.7 FM and streaming on the KCMO Talk Radio app. So you now have two county legislators in Jackson County who are saying, Mr. Attorney General, Andrew Bailey, please get involved and please help us figure out what to do with the county executive who basically is derelict of duty. And he is. Nobody knows where the county executive is most of the time. Let me repeat that. The guy that you pay as a Jackson County resident, the person who is clearing six figures easy in salary and has seen this county turn to complete mush over the last few years. When it comes to these teams, no one knows what the future is for the Chiefs and the Royals. We hope they'll stay here in Jackson County, but no one really knows. You've got, obviously, a property tax debacle of all debacles that has people being forced out of their homes, and Frank White is not even showing up to meetings. Not only is he obviously telling the Missouri State Tax Commission to pound sand, not only is he telling his own legislature to pound sand, he's telling the residents to pound sand, and he doesn't even show face. He is completely MIA. So now, this was led by Manny Abarca, who is the definition of a broken clock. He's right twice a day, wrong the other, 23 hours and 58 minutes. And then Sean Smith, who both talked to Channel 9 and the rest of the media yesterday, KMBC, and you'll hear Barca's voice first and then Sean Smith on Frank White.
It is time to do more than just complain and yell and scream legislatively. I think that's why now we're calling in the Attorney General to come in and launch a formal investigation.
And instead he's coaching the Monarchs at least some of his time, and we just don't know his whereabouts. When you can ask week after week to his chief of staff, where is the county executive? And the answer is he doesn't know. His chief of staff doesn't know where Frank is. That's a problem.
I'm glad that Sean Smith is using my Monarchs line, by the way. You appreciate that, Mark? I think that's I'll give it to him, please. Anyone can use it.
Yeah, as long as somebody else. I mean, you were the first one on it, I think.
I think so. I mean, we've been monitoring the Monarchs schedule on a week-by-week basis to try to figure out where Frank is at. Who are they playing? The South Dakota Pighounds or something like that?
Jackrabbits, maybe?
Yeah, might be the Jackrabbits. I don't know.
That's the college team. Never
mind. Well, just start making up animals and names, and you're probably going to be right when it comes to independent baseball. But anyway, there has to be, and maybe we can make up like a Where's Frank game, because nobody seems to know where the county executive is. He doesn't show up to meetings. I mean, imagine, use any level of government. Imagine if Mayor Lucas just wasn't showing up to meetings. Like, say what you want about Mayor Lucas, and maybe some of you would prefer he not show up to meetings, but the guy, at least is physically there and, doing his job. I don't think some people understand just how incompetent this county is operating right now. There is no budget. They didn't pass a budget for the year. They're operating without a budget. No one knows where the county executive is. The two professional sports teams in this town are struggling to get a meeting. They don't know what's up and what's down. It is an absolute utter mess. So now they're saying, okay, we need to get the Attorney General involved, Andrew Bailey. And that's what they have requested. They want him to review some of the county executive's recent decisions, including a failure to devote himself full-time to the office of county executive, failure to provide required budget information to the legislature, enabling unlawful disbursement of funds in 2025 without an approved budget, and then, of course, his veto last week of the legislature's ordinance that said you have to abide by the Missouri State Tax Commission, which said you've got to roll back the 2023 assessments to a maximum of 15%. And he has basically thumbed his nose in every single one of those instances. So Andrew Bailey was on this show a couple of days ago, and here's what he said about this possibility.
Where every legal option is on the table. the political subdivisions of the state of Missouri have to comply with the laws of the state of Missouri, and that is certainly true in this instance. Look, Kansas City is poised to be an economic hub of this entire region. There's just been this renaissance of economic development downtown. Things are going great, and yet we've got local leaders who want to squander all that. Why? To undermine the rule of law? It makes no sense to me. I am ashamed that local officials are going to be behaving this way, and we're going to hold them responsible.
Well, I will see what happens with Andrew Bailey, the Attorney General. Of course, he's got some beef right now with Mayor Lucas as well, requesting documents under the Sunshine Law, and the mayor is kind of mocking him. At least he was last week in a statement. So there's a lot on the table and a lot on the desk of Attorney General Andrew Bailey. This is just the latest iteration. But here's what also needs to happen. The organizers of the Frank White recall effort, wow, say that one 10 times in a row. The Frank White recall effort, woo, got that one a little tongue-twisted. They have nearly 60,000 signatures, and they say that they have now submitted them. So this is going to take a couple of weeks, they say, to make sure they have enough signatures for the recall effort. They need 43,000 valid signatures. County officials say it will take 2 weeks to verify the signatures. And then the legislature would vote to put this on the ballot. And my guess is that they would shoot for an early August election on recalling Frank White, which is just over 3 months away, but feels like a very, very long time away, John.
Well, you want to follow now because the Netflix series tends to, romanticize things.
That's true.
Right now it's happening in real life, real time.
I just hope we get a little cameo in that Netflix series here on KCMO, just like we did with our friends on the other side of the pond ahead of the Chiefs Super Bowl a couple of years ago.
Yeah,
right?
That's right.
Remember that whole deal? All right. Now, speaking of the Chiefs, the NFL draft tonight, the Chiefs have the 31st pick. Second to last pick in the first round of the NFL draft. We're going to talk to Keatsman about this coming up at the bottom of the hour. So Keatsman's going to join me. We'll get the full draft preview. They're up in Green Bay, Lambeau Field, the whole deal. They moved this draft around now. Do you guys have a preferred position? Mark, I know you've done like 73 mock drafts. So you might have a player for me that you like tonight.
Yeah, I've got... Well, Josh Simmons, the offensive tackle from Ohio State.
I've seen his name.
If he falls down, he's been a little bit injured, but he's one guy. If not, there's two guys from Oregon that I really like. Left tackle Josh Connerly Jr.
Okay.
And defensive lineman Derek Harmon.
Oh, okay.
So two Oregon guys.
All right. What about this Mississippi State D tackle I keep seeing as like the Chris Jones heir apparent? You like him or not as much?
Yeah, he'd be all right. I'm wondering if he'll fall to us, though. That's
Gotcha. Okay. All right. John, what do you like tonight,
Hard
big
for
man?
me to go against Mark because it's literally he got an A+ on a draft he had submitted on every round, 1 through 7.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so including Josh, his pick. My problem is I want the first-round player to be playing and contribute this year. And unfortunately, that doesn't fit the profile of the guy Mark picked, but it's hard for me to go against Mark. I'm torn.
So we're all going with Mark's pick. Josh Simmons,
Maybe
offensive tackle, Ohio
Maybe
State.
So, if he's available.
All right, Mark.
Possibility.
Don't let us down, okay? I hope that Brett Veach is listening and streaming from Green Bay this morning. You know that Veach has the KCMO Talk Radio app. I know he does.
No shortage of help, I'm sure.
I asked if I could join him in the draft room, but he never responded back.
What'd you, DM him?
I just put it out there. I don't think he has a Twitter. He probably has a few burners out there. But.
I guarantee you Veach has a couple burners out there. Come on, all these guys have burners. Not like Kevin Durant, who's got like 7 burners to, talk about how great he is. Veach doesn't need that. We all know how good he is at his job. But either way. All right, so Mark got rejected by Brett Veach to be in the draft room tonight. That's okay, Mark. Maybe next year, buddy. We'll look out for you. I'll make a pitch, okay? All right, coming up on KCMO Talk Radio, Keatsman will be here bottom of the hour. We got an arrest of the ATV driver who ran over a Kansas City police officer. We'll tell you who that individual is, and then also an unfortunate ranking that came out for Kansas City as we kick it off on a Thursday morning on 95.7 FM KCMO and streaming on that KCMO Talk Radio app. What up, Beach? Guy Benson, 2 o'clock on KCMO. Get those tickets right now. All right, we got, they're selling fast for his event in Kansas City on June 12th. Tickets are available now at KCMOTalkRadio.com. Dinner, drinks, meet and greet, photo op, all at Boulevard. We are going to have a great time. So the thug and the punk who drove his ATV over a Kansas City, Missouri cop last weekend has been caught and has been charged. Kendall Coleman charged with first-degree assault, armed criminal action, and aggravated fleeing a stop, according to Jackson County Prosecutor Melissa Johnson yesterday. This is, this is actually 2 weeks old. Excuse me. It's from the 12th of April, when at about 7 p.m., right at Truman Road and Main Street, Kansas City police were conducting a traffic stop. And during the stop, an officer attempted to stop an ATV driver, later identified as Coleman, and take him into custody. What Coleman then did, and the video's out there on social media, reversed the ATV, caused the officer to fall to the ground, and while the officer was crouched down, Coleman lifted his ATV into a wheelie and dropped the front of the wheels onto the officer and ran over him before fleeing the scene. The officer was brought to the hospital. He was in critical condition, but he has since been released from the hospital, thank goodness. But this is the kind of stuff that you've got to make an example out of this guy. If you are Melissa Johnson and you're heading towards a summer where these dirt bikes and these ATVs are, for whatever reason, wildly popular right now, people are trying to go viral on social media, and they're doing it in high-traffic areas like right there at Truman and Main Street, you make an example out of this POS. That's what you do. And you throw everything you can at this guy. Because guess what? He also had, I know this is going to shock you, he actually had a criminal background.
Talk about a bombshell.
Who would have guessed a guy who has the audacity to run over a cop with his ATV isn't a good dude and has done some stuff before? So court records show that Coleman pleaded guilty in 2019 to 2 felony counts of delivery of a controlled substance and 1 felony count of unlawful use of a weapon after a 2017 arrest by Independence Police. He was sentenced to 4 years in prison, but the sentence was suspended in favor of 3 years of supervised probation. Another problem that we've got here in the Kansas City area and just in our legal system at large. The guy was sentenced to 4 years in prison, and then it's suspended in favor of 3 years of supervised probation. That stuff happens every single day, and it's one of the major problems we have in this legal system right now. So this thug was caught. Thank goodness for that. And now it's up to the new prosecutor, Melissa Johnson, to not treat him with kid gloves and to send a message not just to individuals who are going to be downtown potentially doing this stuff when they shouldn't be, but also to the general public, that we're taking this seriously. And as cliche as it is, there's a new sheriff in town. Because this will be getting a lot of attention today as well. U.S. News & World Report rates Kansas City as one of the country's most dangerous places. The U.S. News & World Report ranked Kansas City as number 8 on its 25 most dangerous places in the U.S. in 2024 and 2025. Not a good look at all, John.
I was going to let the cat out of the bag, though, because I reviewed the story, and I thought if I said the most dangerous cities in Missouri are St. Louis, Kansas City, and Springfield, we'd all agree. But when I would say they're all in the top 25 in the nation, you would drop your teeth.
I know. They're all right there in the top 25. St. Louis is 2, and Springfield is 14. It's obviously it's on a per capita basis.
Sure would like that to be some kind of sports ranking.
No,
that's not what it's for. This is negative.
This is not a good look for the state of Missouri, and certainly not for Kansas City either. Now, interestingly, this comes out yesterday, and Quentin Lucas did have a post up on his social media talking about how they are seeing actually a decrease somewhat in violent crime. As of Sunday, Kansas City is at 43 homicides year to date. That means January 1 through Sunday of this week. The 4-year average through this past week is 46. That is a slight decrease. 83 non-fatal shootings as of Sunday. The 4-year average is 148. That is a 56% decrease in this category. That's obviously good because last year what we had was a decrease in homicides, but the non-fatal shootings were actually up. So it's like the criminals just needed to get their glasses checked. But this year, the homicides are down slightly and the non-fatal shootings are down a lot. So that's actually a good sign. If you get the non-fatal shootings down, that naturally is going to lead to less homicides. It means more people or less people are firing off their weapons at other people. So that is obviously, I think, actually a first step to really seeing a decrease in the homicides, which is a step in the right direction. But you don't want to have 3 of your cities on the top 15 most violent cities in America. And we haven't even scratched the surface, obviously, of still the property crime issue that is rampant. And that is really the issue that is more prevalent for a lot of people in Kansas City who, let's be honest, are not living in neighborhoods where homicides are likely, but they are dealing with car break-ins, right? Waldo and Brookside, and God forbid those turn deadly, like Chef Sean Brady last September. So you do have cases where maybe people in Kansas City aren't dealing with the homicide issue ad nauseum, but still, they're dealing with break-ins and property crimes, and those can turn violent very quickly. Like this past weekend, when some, punks were out there trying to steal vehicles in Waldo, and you had neighbors end up with bullet holes in the side of their homes. Like that is happening. And that obviously remains, I don't want to say just as big of an issue as the homicide deal, but it impacts a wider swath of people and a much different demographic of people as well. And that can't be overlooked in this story either. But not a good look for Missouri's 3 major cities to be in the top 15 most dangerous places, because that impacts everything economically. That impacts how people perceive the cities, where they're going to move, where their businesses are going to shift to. That matters just as much as anything else as well. Now, I'm just stumped on this one, man. I really am. Good morning, 7:05. Great to be here on an NFL Draft Thursday on KCMO Talk Radio. All got our Chiefs gear on this morning. So yesterday, RFK Jr., Health and Human Services, along with Marty Makary of the FDA, roll out their plan to basically get rid of a lot of the food dyes that are in our cereals, in our candies. And this is something that is supposed to and absolutely will be beneficial for everyday Americans who are ingesting so much garbage on a regular basis that we don't even realize. Petroleum-based artificial food dyes is what they're officially called, that are going to be phased out by the end of next year from our nation's food supply. It's part of the MAHA, Make America Healthy Again agenda. It is a fantastic agenda that is not about politics. It's not about left versus right. I mean, it is for some people because their Trump derangement syndrome is just constantly at a 10 out of 10. So anything that comes out of this administration, they can't possibly support. Even just good, solid stuff like this, that is obviously a good attempt to try to improve the health of Americans and, most importantly, our children, who are the targets for a lot of this food. So this comes out yesterday, and to me, it's something that we should all be rallying behind. Dr. Marty Makary is the head of the FDA, and he goes on CNN yesterday. And it starts off as a pleasant conversation, right? Good conversation. Rah, get rid of the food dyes. I mean, let's get our kids focused on being healthy again. You've got a lot of these food dyes that basically trick kids' brains into thinking that they are still hungry when they're not, basically a drug. It's also tied to potentially ADHD issues, which, as we talked about a lot last week in a big piece in the New York Times, you have kids now who are being diagnosed with ADHD and are being prescribed medication for ADHD at 3x the levels of what doctors thought the number would be 30 years ago. We have a problem with obesity in our kids. And it's not just the food dyes are not going to create this panacea of health in young people, but it's definitely a step in the right direction. There's no doubt about it. So Marty Makary goes on CNN yesterday to talk about this and starts off pretty well. And, to me, it was a very apolitical message.
Why are these petroleum-based dyes in our food and in our medication in the first place?
Well, good question, Dana. I don't think we appreciated the potential risks to human health and child health when they were first introduced. Yellow dye number 5, for example, was noted to be a bright, vibrant yellow color as the byproduct of coal tar in the coal ash. And then people decided to put it in fabric, and then they thought, well, we can put it in food. The studies have caught up with the introduction of these petroleum-based chemical food dyes, and the data doesn't look good. Studies have shown an association with ADHD. It also makes ultra-processed food look more attractive for young kids, messing with their minds where they feel full and they want more of the food. And we've got an epidemic of childhood chronic diseases, so we are erring on the safe side and moving to remove these from the U.S. food supply.
Great. Who's going to be against that? Like, unless you work for the big food lobby or you're an executive, at one of these major companies that makes Skittles, M&Ms, Fruit Loops, Lucky Charms, Apple Jacks, Pop-Tarts, unless you're one of the executives there and you're doing this because it gets kids and their parents to buy more of it as basically a drug, why would you be against it? And just because you're basically a legal drug dealer doesn't mean we're going to support you. So Marty Makary lays it out yesterday. But, of course, that can't be it, right? It can't just be like, hey, great, CNN interview, all done. It's not anti-Trump. No. You know as well as I do, there was always going to be something that had to be taking a shot at the administration because, well, it is CNN after all, isn't it?
Fake news.
So here was another part of the interview about a minute later with Dr. Marty Makary with the FDA. He gets asked about how the FDA has been cut and dozed, and how are you going to survive with these cuts? And Marty Makary gives a little fact check to Dana Bash on CNN.
Somebody who was at the FDA, who left before you were confirmed. His name is Jim Jones. He oversaw food and nutrition policy at the FDA, and he said he was resigning because his work was compromised by thoughtless cuts at the FDA. Both he and Dr. Hall, what they're saying, again, is that they're excited about the MAHA movement. They're excited about food safety goals. But is your ability to make meaningful progress stunted because the personnel are no longer in place to accomplish your goals with all of these cuts?
Stop it. Can you really do what you want to do without a bloated bureaucracy behind you? Asks Dana Bash to Marty Makary. Yeah, if only they had that tank Rex Archer, formerly of the Kansas City, Missouri Health Department, in the mix, everything would be fine. Oh, boy.
I love Thanksgiving.
Oh, yeah, if only we had Rex Archer in the mix. Oh, we'd be leading the MAHA movement. Yep, because nothing screams make America healthy again like that load Rex Archer of the KCMO Health Department. You're right there, John.
Well, and our expert who worked there before you got there, Jim Jones. John Johnson, Will Wilson. Hello.
Oh, man. I mean, how many other made-up names can we go for here?
Right.
I mean,
J&J.
Richard Small. I mean, come on.
George
now.
Gershwin.
Yeah, seriously.
No, Dana, and I'm glad you asked because all the cuts were limited to communications staff. You would not believe the number.
The communications staff was cut. Oh, all the staff cuts at the FDA. How are you going to go on? Oh, you mean like the assistant to the assistant to the assistant communications director? Yeah, I'm pretty sure we're going to be okay at the FDA, all right?
Of communications staff at the agency. Redundancies in IT and in legislative affairs and lobbyists from the FDA to the Hill. There's been a fiefdom culture, and we're now eliminating redundancies and consolidating those services. No cuts were made. There were no layoffs to scientists or food inspectors. And my job as commissioner coming in after those cuts is to make sure that the scientists and inspectors have all the resources they need to do their job well.
No cuts to scientists and food inspectors. The cuts were to redundancies in IT and lobbyists. Oh, please. Cry me a river for lobbyists losing their jobs. Come on. I'm glad that Marty had the data to back himself up there, and he put CNN right back in its place. Redundancies in IT, I'm glad that those jobs are gone. We did not cut scientists, and we did not cut food inspectors at the FDA. Great. That was outstanding. But it's like CNN, they just can't help themselves. It's crazy. 913-408-7957 on a Thursday morning. Let's go to Randy. He's on KCMO. Good morning, Randy. Go ahead, buddy.
Hey, I think Dana Bash had a Happy Gilmore moment, and to do with food, this comes out pretty funny because he tells her we're trying to make people happy, and she goes, we eat pieces of crap like Trump for breakfast. And he's like, you eat crap for breakfast? Well, that's our problem.
Yeah, I remember that one.
Oh, well done there, Randy.
Classic.
Nice job there, buddy. Excellent work. 913-408-7957. That's our studio line and our text line on KCMO Talk Radio. Pete, the Constipated News Network is just too much for me sometimes. Yeah, I know. That's why you just have to allow us to bring it to you here on KCMO. But hopefully with the improvements in the food that were being served, CNN won't have as much of that constipation that they deal with on a regular basis that causes Wolf Blitzer to consistently look that way when he's staring into the television camera on a daily basis. Mark just did a very good Wolf Blitzer here in the studio. I wish that we could have shared with you on social media.
They used to call me Mark Blitzer with my reporting when he was reporting out on the street back in the day.
Well, that was back when Wolf was actually a credible reporter.
That's true.
That was before CNN went off the deep end. So that's very nice of them to call you that, Mark. Very, very nice. Jeez.
Such a nice man.
7:15. Mayor Lucas is 20 minutes away for his Thursday morning 7:30 slot on KCMO Talk Radio. And next, I have an update on what one local municipality wants to do in response to this viral YMCA story out of North Kansas City, where the allegations are this dude was walking around the women's locker room and exposed himself to a 7-year-old girl. And what did he say when they shrieked?
Quote, honey, I'm a woman.
Yeah, that's what the guy said. So there's a adjacent municipality that is potentially going to make some big news on this front. And I'll tell you what I'm hearing on that next on KCMO. Well, this story is not going anywhere, at least not here on KCMO. I'm sure it'll be blacked out in most of local media, although a credit to Fox 4 for leading the way on this story, where, according to allegations, a mother and her 7-year-old daughter were in the YMCA women's locker room in North Kansas City when they bumped into somebody who was in the flesh, everything exposed, as a guy. And that individual then looked at this mother and her daughter and said,
quote, honey, I'm a woman.
Yeah. So this is now being handled by North KC Police. YMCA is investigating. And, of course, the Clay County Prosecutor's Office will be involved as well. So, I mean, I've been hearing a lot about this. There are a lot of people who have reached out and they've said, hey, are you talking about this? It's like, I know that people can't listen 4 hours every day, but trust me, we've spent a lot of time on this story the last couple of days. And it's gotten national attention now, at least on social media. Of course, like, CNN's not covering this. If they're going to cover a story in Kansas City, they're looking for their next Cameron Lamb story. They're not looking for a story of this kind of nature. But I've heard from people that Platte County officials are not happy. I know it's a Clay County story, but Platte County officials are not happy. And they have 2 community centers that are operated by the YMCA. And their policy is that people can use the locker room of their choice. So I know for a fact that now Platte County officials are going to be looking into changing that policy. And as one person told me up in Platte County, you can take that to the bank. So there are conversations that are going to be happening now between Platte County officials and the Kansas City YMCA officials coming up this week. And what are they looking at? Well, right now, up in Platte County, here's the deal. The YMCA gets free rent in 2 of their county-owned facilities. And those can be canceled by Platte County officials with a $10,000 breakup fee. And there's a movement up in Platte County to do that. And their thought is like, why should the YMCA get free rent with a policy like that? Why are we giving preferential treatment to the YMCA when they have policies that would allow somebody and a guy to technically just be in the flesh in the women's locker room? Why is that allowed? And why should the government be subsidizing that kind of a policy? And as one official told me up there, I'm willing to die on this hill. And my guess is that there are other local officials in Platte County who will very much agree with this. So this could now spark a major problem for the YMCA in the Kansas City area. Now, could something similar happen in Clay? Maybe. Will it happen in Jackson County? No. I mean, you've got an issue in Jackson County where no one even knows where the county executive is. So that ain't going to happen. They can't figure out property taxes from 2 years ago. Never mind this problem. And in Johnson County, well, you know as well as I do, not a chance. No way, no how. There's no way anything's going to come out of that when it comes to Johnson County. In fact, in Johnson County, you might have county officials who are like, come on in. We'll give you more free rent for every person that walks into the wrong locker room. They may give you, more subsidies if you do that in Johnson County with some of the people in charge down here. So I'm not sitting here expecting this to happen tomorrow, but just know that, if you're in Platte County, you got some good people in charge up there right now. And make sure that if you want them to pursue this, you tell them. Let's go to Terry. You got a minute, Terry. You're on KCMO. Good morning.
Good morning. I just wanted to let you know that I go to that Platte County YMCA, and they have a sign on the women's locker room that boys over 5 years old must use the men's locker room. So I don't know why men are walking through the women's locker room if they're over 5.
So it says what? Say that again to me. The sign says what?
Boys over 5 years old must use the men's locker room.
Okay, that's what I thought you said. Here's the catch, Terry. If you don't consider yourself a boy, well, there's your workaround.
That's very true.
Mm-hmm.
That's very true.
Yeah, and that's the problem.
Yep.
Thank you, Terry. I appreciate you.
You're welcome.
Stay safe up there in the women's locker room in Parkville at the YMCA. Never thought I'd have to say it, but here we are. Last couple of days, stories started brewing that the Bengals may be looking at St. Louis, leaving Cincinnati, going to St. Louis. And it all came from just this ongoing saga in Cincinnati, very similar to here in Kansas City, where the team wants to upgrade their stadium, maybe get a new stadium. The county is like, I don't know. Do we have the money? What do we do? So then this rumor started getting floated out there that, well, the Bengals may go to St. Louis. Oh, my goodness.
If the Bengals or if the St. Louis wanted an NFL team, I don't think they'd go for Cincinnati. I think they'd just try to take the Chiefs across the state, right?
I don't know. They would do – who knows? But the whole thing seemed so absurd. But you're right, Mark. If they really wanted to make a play, I mean, that would be beyond bizarre and it would never happen. But to your point, that would at least make some sense. So, we've got 7 radio stations in the building. And somebody came up to me a couple of days ago and they're like, yeah, you know what's going to happen? Chiefs are going to Kansas and the Bengals are coming to St. Louis. And the Jeff City, St. Louis crowd is going to do whatever it can to bring an NFL team back to St. Louis. They don't care about the Chiefs anymore. They'll let them go to Kansas. I'm like, what are you talking about? And this person, for the record, was a big fan of Biden and predicted Kamala was going to win and Trump had no chance. So I said to this person, I said, boy, I think your stadium predictions are just as good as your political predictions. And let's just put it this way. The conversation ended very quickly after that. Because this person was always like, Trump's got no shot. He could never win. Sweeping 7 swing states later, let's just put it this way. We haven't talked a lot about that subject since. I'll leave it at that. So now we know the whole St. Louis thing was just media leverage from the team because yesterday Hamilton County and the Bengals reached a preliminary agreement on $185 million in improvements to Paycor Stadium for the 2026 season. The vote will come from commissioners officially on April 29th next week, and the agreement would be the first step towards both parties agreeing towards a new lease and up to $830 million in stadium renovations. The first phase would cover upgrades to club lounges, stadium suites, and concessions. The Bengals would pay $120 million for those improvements, with some of the money coming from a loan under the NFL's G5 program. The county would kick in $64 million for fixes to escalators, elevators, the electrical grid, glass refurbishment, and fixes to the stadium scoreboard control room. They've got until June 30th to agree on a new lease or approve the first of 5 two-year extensions. The original lease for the Bengals expires on June 30th of 2026. So, I don't have all the details, obviously. This is over in Cincinnati. But the team kicking in 2-to-1 ratio on dollars is a pretty good start. Now, if it goes to $830 million and the county's kicking in the bulk of that, that's a different conversation. But if the Bengals are putting in $120 up front and the county's kicking in $64 for escalators, elevators, everything else, that's not a bad deal for the taxpayer right now. Now, the devil's always in the details, but you tell me where else you would see a team kick in 2-to-1 on the dollars for stadium upgrades and improvements. You won't see that. I mean, that's very rare to see. So I don't know if this is a start of, a broader conversation where the taxpayer ultimately gets screwed. But if nothing else, what you're seeing is stadiums having a very difficult time getting taxpayer monies in a lot of major American cities. The Bears have had a lot of issues trying to figure out their next move stadium-wise. This issue in Cincinnati has been real until it got figured out here yesterday. We know what's going on here in Kansas City. And there's a populist sentiment on the left and the right now that they don't want to pay for billionaire stadiums. Main Street has been squeezed for a long time, and inflation the last 4 years, courtesy of the former guy, just made it that much worse. Where people are not in a place where they say, sure, just out of principle, give my money to a billionaire sports franchise. That's on both sides of the political aisle. And then, of course, you've also got these municipalities that are realizing, first off, the ROI is not there. When all these governments started getting involved in stadium projects, it really kicked off in the mid-'90s. The first one to do it on a major scale was the Texas Rangers in Arlington, then owned by George W. Bush, or run by George W. Bush. And that kickstarted this whole idea of, wow, you mean counties and cities will kick in money for sports owners to build stadiums under the guise of economic development? Oh, man, this is great. And 30 years later, we're still doing it, but people are starting to wake up. So now the leverage for these teams is going to be, we might go across the state line, and then you get state pride involved. We might leave Cincinnati and go to St. Louis. Oh, boy, you better give us what we want. That's the only leverage now that a lot of these teams have. And they'll use it, right? And when you get the blind leading the blind, or you get some people who are like, yeah, sure, we'll do our job to keep the team in the Kansas City area because they've threatened to go absolutely nowhere, but we got to make sure we're doing our part on the Kansas side of the state line. That's how you get stuff like this. That's how you get teams getting some leverage where they can say, well, we're going to go to Kansas, and then pride gets in the mix. And that's ultimately what these deals end up coming down to. They're not about what's good for the taxpayer. It ends up being about pride. Don't miss Guy Benson coming to Kansas City June 12th. We'll be at Boulevard. Photo op, show, dinner, drinks, the whole deal. Get your tickets now at KCMOTalkRadio.com. They are selling fast. So the boys on the other side of the glass just shared this with me here. We got done with Lori Sharp of Prairie Village City Council talking about how they just kicked in $23,000 to their sister city in Ukraine for military drones. So back in, and I'll show you, this is not about picking sides in war here. In 2023, Leewood gave its sister city in Israel $25,000. This was November of 23, just a few weeks after the horrific attacks of October 7th. Now, that's also absurd. And I am through and through Team Israel. But that is not the job of our local cities here in Kansas City. Like, we have a federal government that is supporting us overseas or supporting our allies overseas as they see fit based on the people that we elect. Leewood kicking in $25,000. I mean, I'm on Israel's side 7 days a week and twice on Sunday, but we do not need to be spending Leewood city dollars on foreign affairs. That's nuts.
And that $25,000 that Leewood gave was supposed to be on a trip to Israel for whoever Leewood was going to send over, but then they couldn't go because of the COVID stuff.
Yeah, so they figure, hey, why not use it for something in Leewood? We'll just spend it overseas.
Yeah, exactly.
This is absurd. This was
get yourself some ammunition.
Here's a quote to Woke 41. Councilman Andrew Osman says it's something we didn't even think twice about. That's part of what a sister city is, to be there through thick and thin. More like Andrew Assman to me. Yeah, through thick and thin. That's what we do. We fund wars overseas with local city dollars. Right. No, that's not your job. You want to do that? You want to vote on spending money in Israel or Ukraine or anywhere else? Go run for Congress. Hey, jeez.
There you go.
Primary Sharice Davids if you're a Democrat.
Plenty of positions available.
Yeah, or you know what? Run against her as an independent or a Republican. If that is something you're passionate about, or join your local church on an overseas mission trip or something. Like, you do not need to be spending or budgeting local dollars from your taxpayers to cities in other parts of the world. That's not your job. What happened to city council members who are just like, you know what, my job is to make sure that some potholes are filled and people get their trash removed. And, on top of that, we do things like remove the snow in a timely manner. Now, people that are city council members in Prairie Village and Leewood are like, yes, I will gladly send my money to foreign countries or send the taxpayer monies to foreign countries. Oh,
got to keep an eye on things like we have 12 sister cities in Kansas City. There's a sign down there on the plaza that lists them. They like to put Seville, Spain at the top since the architecture down there. But we have 2 sister cities in China.
Oh, really?
So let's send them some money, huh? Not.
Boy, don't give them any ideas.
Well, right. Okay? Well, we should be awake here. Be judicious.
That's right.
We need to fund some lab research, right?
Yeah. Maybe we can kill some bats. Wow. All right, let's go to the Blue Valley School District now, where 254 properties received notification that these homes owe a couple $1,000s in property taxes because there was an error in their property taxes for 2023 and 2024. Basically, they owe backed taxes to the Blue Valley School District. These homeowners did nothing wrong, but they were informed here recently that basically we screwed up in the tax office, so you owe us money. And by the way, your deadline is June 3rd in basically 5 weeks. So one woman talked to Fox 4 and said that she now owes $1,100 in taxes for 23 and more than $1,000 in taxes for 24. And she owes it to the tax collectors in 5 weeks. And this is on top of her $5,300 in annual property taxes that she's currently paying. She says it's going to be a burden for her right now. And this is part of, unfortunately, something that is now, I don't want to say widespread, but you have hundreds of people who have gotten notifications saying, sorry, we screwed up your property taxes from the last couple of years, and we need you to give us thousands of dollars. Even Frank White's like, this is kind of incompetent.
What a scam. Like, first of all, prove it. And second of all, I do remember from school the null set, and that's what you're getting from me. Zilch, not at the big goose egg. You screwed it up. It's past the time of collection date. You know, if they owed you money, they try not to pay you, right?
Of course.
Oh, no, you didn't get it in time.
Well, I don't know how this is going to play out. If someone's going to bring a legal case here, it's entirely possible. but I imagine it's going to be very difficult to win. And then it gets to this, though. How much are you willing to pay in attorney fees if on the flip side it's like, well, I'm going to pay the attorney fees to try to save $2,000, but the attorney fees might cost you more than $2,000. So that's where the government's got you bent over on this whole thing. And that's about all they do well.